Right, hello wine-drinking people. Time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday, and the month of January was just a slew of drinking opportunities for you, our wine-drinking people. And I try to give you at least one or two once-in-a-lifetime tasting opportunities a month because you never know when your last day on this earth is going to be. And to leave this world without trying Clos de Tart or some of Burgundy's other great wines would really be a shame. Clos de Tart is one of the Grand Cru monopoles in Burgundy. It's from the town of Mory-Saint-Denis. There's 5 Grand Crus there: Clos de Lambres, Clos de Tart, Bonmar, which is also in Chambord-Musigny, Clos Saint-Denis, which we had, which happened to be the wine of the night, not the Clos de Tart. But we did have some great vintages of Clos de Tart. Clos de Tart is approximately 7.5 hectares in size. It's one of the larger Grand Crus. They can produce about 2,500 cases of Clos de Tart, which is quite a lot. If you look at another famous Grand Cru like Musigny, they produce about 3,000 cases in total, and there's like a dozen producers. So Clos de Tart is a big production for a Grand Cru monopole, and monopole means one family owns this. It's one of the only Grand Cru monopoles that exists in Burgundy today. Well, Romanée-Conti, Domaine de Romanée-Conti has Romanée-Conti and La Tâche, but it's actually owned by 2 families, not one. The Montmisson family owns Clos de Tart exclusively, and they have since like in the 1930s when they bought it at a rainy day at an auction. And rumor has it, well, it was very rainy, and a lot of people didn't show up at that auction. They got it for a steal because of that. But this is a vineyard that has been named Clos de Tart since the 12th century, and it's been owned by one entity ever since. And that's a great thing about Burgundy, you know. Even though they classified it in the 30s, this Clos de Tart vineyard as a Grand Cru, well, has been pretty much defined for almost 1,000 years. So a huge history of making great wine. In Burgundy, Grand Cru only represents 1% of all the wines, so these wines are going up in price, I mean, just dramatically, because the Asian market is now starting to catch on. Look, they make a boatload of, you know, Bordeaux, 30,000 cases of Chateau Lafite. You can find it anywhere, probably in 7-Elevens now in Hong Kong. They have Chateau Lafite. 70% of it is probably fake, but Clos de Tart and the world's great Burgundies, not a lot of these wines to go around. Much rarer, much more harder to find, and much more easier to stomach, I think, when young. But the great red Burgundies will last 20 to 30, 40 years or more. Well, hey, we started out with a 78 Dujac Clos Saint-Denis. I wanted to give people an example of some other wines from the village of Mory-Saint-Denis, some high-level wines, and they weren't making great wines at Clos de Tart back in the 70s. Really, the current incarnation of what's happened at Clos de Tart happened in the late 90s. 1998 was our first vintage of Clos de Tart. Sylvain Pilot, the current winemaker, took over in the 90s. The Montmisson family sold their name to the Boissets and kept their Clos de Tart vineyard, so they had money to reinvest in the winery. They completely redid it. It was finished in 99. So to me, the wines of Clos de Tart from that period on are at another level, some of the greatest wines in Burgundy. Well, this 78 stole the show. You know, really a lot of lovely sweet fruit on the nose here. Needed to open up all night, though. At first, these 2 wines that we had, the Old Dogs, the 78 Dujac and the 79 Amiot, Clos de la Roche, I mean, the 79 jumped out of the bottle and to the early lead. But after 2 or 3 hours, man, the Clos Saint-Denis just continued to open up and expand. Lovely sweet fruit still here on the nose. Lovely spice in this. And, you know, at the end of the night, this wine really showed its class. And the vintage 78, which is, you know, a better vintage in terms of holding up long-term than 79. Really bright acidity, a little bit tart at the end. But like I said, after this wine was open, you know, for 3 hours, everything was just singing. It was hitting on all cylinders. And I can still taste this wine now, just perfectly balanced, lovely silky smooth texture, a killer example of Clos Saint-Denis from Dujac 78. 79 Amiot, this wine had a lovely smoky, meaty aroma, had a coffee, lots of spice, brown spice, and still had some fruit left to it. But more smoke and bacon and really meaty notes. A good hand of that brown spice. Really smooth and silky on the tongue with some tangy cherry fruit hanging in there. Really nice freshness, but started to fall off a little bit after opening, and that is the sign. The 78 was the clear winner for me, but this wine's still most excellent. And we still have a few bottles of this wine to sell, I think. Or maybe it sold out that night. I know a few people ordered it. Anyways, the Clos de Tart started with 98. And this was just after Sylvain took over. And this wine needed some time to open up. Some really dark earth and dark cherry fruit, kind of a meaty note, a bit of spice here, and some minty nuance, tar-like notes on the nose. really smooth and silky on the palate, still showing some unresolved tannins and a solid core of fruit, though. This wine needs a little time still. But, the lesser of all the Clos de Tarts on the table, which, hey, I wouldn't kick this wine out of my glass. The 2000 Clos de Tart, this is a vintage that's very seductive and drinking at or near its peak right now. Well, Bob Malner thought it needed another 10 years, but really smooth, lovely soft cherry fruit, raspberry fruit, a hint of spice and mint in this wine. Very silky and smooth on the tongue. The tannin is really round. Not a lot of unresolved tannin here, but still a lovely balance, lovely freshness in this wine. And like I said, I thought it was drinking at or near its peak. A most excellent example of Clos de Tart. The 2002, this is a big vintage. This wine still had some tannins here, lots of spice, kind of sappy quality to the fruit, some smoke. Still quite youthful, though. Those tannins becoming evident after you swallow the wine. And lovely exotic spice, though, coming in, herbal, minty notes. But, this wine's still a little hard-edged at first, but really a lot of potential in this wine. It's my third favorite Clos de Tart of the evening. The 2003, wow, killer. All that and a box of chocolates. Really lovely, ripe, dark cherry fruit, almost liqueur-like in concentration. Exotic spices, floral notes, really well endowed. A bit of earth showing here as well. Big and rich on the tongue. Lovely, silky, velvety tannins. But this wine's got some tannin in here after the finish. It needs some time. And hey, I'm glad. 15% alcohol, and it's balanced and still lovely freshness. I got 3 liters and magnums of this wine set aside for my daughter Isabella. It's her birth year. 2004, unfortunately, Antonio wasn't quite as lucky. That's when he was born. This is not a great vintage for Clos de Tart, but a really nice wine and really different from the other young Clos de Tarts in that it had this lovely minty herbal character to it, raspberry fruit, kind of dried floral notes, really lovely freshness on the palate. Just didn't have that concentration of fruit. It's not a wine you want to keep for 10 or 20 or 30 years, but wine that's drinking nice right now. Really lovely raspberry coulis fruit and that perfumed spice and mintiness showing through the finish. The 2005 Clos de Tart, wow, this wine is big and needs a lot of time. Really, the next day, this wine just starting to open up. Lovely dark berry fruit, really concentrated and rich, showing brilliantly that exotic spice and floral notes, and a host of tannins coming in this wine, but a firm hand of acidity holding everything in together. This wine needs some time, really rich, really layered, a wine built for the ages. I'd like to taste this in 20 or 30 years, and hey, I might still be around. I'm going to save a few bottles of this one in my cellar. Killer juice. That is what we had to drink at the Clos de Tart tasting. I'm your host, Andrew Lamposoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.